Hi there, this is the Dark Queen. I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to my channel, Creepy Signal, bringing you all your nightmare materials. And today I'm going to be talking about an awesome film that not too many people know about, and I really thought I'd mention it. And today we're going to be talking about an awesome film. That's right, we're talking about Mr. Sardonicus, a guy with a mask. And what can I say about Mr. Sardonicus? I mean, I really appreciated the film. I appreciated the concept. It was absolutely different. And it's actually starring a number of actual stars like Ronald Lewis, Audrey Dalton, Guy Rolfe. Where do I begin? Well, film opens with, we're talking, you know, we're in probably like a medical room because there's no real hospital, and we have Sir Robert Cargrave doing the latest in methods of, you know, therapy with relaxing muscles, things like that. So he's really focusing on the therapeutic new methods of anything associated with cosmetic surgery and muscle disfiguration, things like that. Like that's what he specializes in. But then, you know, we're talking like it's the 1800s, or they're mentioning, hey, something just came out called the hypodermic needle, we should totally check it out, and things like that. And so he gets a letter, and it comes from his ex-girlfriend, who is played by Audrey Dalton, and she plays the Baroness Sardonicus. And so basically he's getting flashbacks about how her father was kind of demeaning him. He wasn't making enough money because he was a resident and she could do better, and so I guess it never worked out, right? But that was the love of his life. So she goes off, marries like $1 billion, you know, baron, and now she's writing him a letter saying, I really, really need you. This is my hour of need, babe. You know, my situation depends on it as far as her life. And so he's like, wow, I better take off. So he stops what he's doing, and he heads over to this weird part of Europe where she's living. And so he takes a train, or I'm pretty sure it's like a train. And so he takes a train there, he gets there, and he's starting to talk about, you know, where he's headed, you know, to the train station manager. And the guy looks like at him like super weird, like, oh, you're going to that place, you're going to the manor of the Baron. Oh. And then he's like, oh, well, wait a minute, let me think about that. You're kind of young, so you don't probably have daughters, you know, to worry about. And he's like, what does that mean? So anyways, he's still making his way on to the Baron's manor, and all of a sudden he gets there and he starts hearing like all these crazy screams of like torture and torment, and it's crazy, right? And so he just like bursts in the mansion, and he sees like this weird old guy with like something wrong with, he's got something going on with his eye. I don't know, I think he's wearing like a fake eye, or they sewed his eye and they painted an eye on it. It's really weird. And he's kind of like an Igor-ish sort of older kind of guy. So we have Senior Igor basically putting leeches on this young girl who's screaming and crying bloody murder. Oh my God, and she's got leeches all over her face, right? And you know, Sir Robert Cargrave comes to the rescue and starts basically, you know, really grilling this guy, like, why are you doing this? This is the worst method. This is so old and primal, blah blah blah. He's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, 1,000 apologies, blah blah blah. And so he lets the girl go, and he was saying, oh, well, this is, you know, what the Baron wants. He wants research, and blah. It's like, this is not how you do research. I'm a doctor, and blah blah blah. And so all of a sudden, you know, he's like, here, you're here to see the Baron and the Baroness. Let me take you to your room. And so he does, and he sees, you know, the Baroness, and she's like, hey, you know, join us for dinner. And so he does, and he's there at the dinner table, and then all of a sudden he meets the Baron, and the Baron has like this cheap looking like dollar store kind of plastic mask on him of a regular face guy, and you're like, wow, what is going on here? And when he starts talking, Guy Rolfe, man, I cannot explain to you how eloquently this guy can speak. I mean, you know, he's right under, you know, Vincent Price, you know, Boris Karloff. He's like the third guy. You're like, oh, you couldn't get Boris Karloff? You know, Vincent said no, Boris said no. You get Guy Rolfe because he will make it eloquent, you know. And I've really followed his career, you know. I kind of had to backtrack because when I saw him in Puppet Master, Toulon's Revenge, and then I was like, wow, has this guy ever done anything? And then that's when it hit me. He's done Dolls. I will review Dolls. Don't you worry, guys. You can rely on me. We will watch Dolls. And he's done Dolls. And so in the morning, the Baron invites him to breakfast. And so after their breakfast, they go outside, and the Baron starts to talk about his backstory, about being, you know, about how this all transpired, why he wears a mask. And so he starts talking about, like, the concept of ghouls and what they are, as far as a ghoul in their particular sort of culture, and it's European, like maybe Romanian possibly, about being a grave robber, and that's the lowest of the low, right? And all of a sudden, you know, he's like, you know, I knew a ghoul, and he's like, and he starts talking about this story about this young man who's married, and they lived with his father. And so his mother had been buried, and they visit her grave often, and they talk about ghouls, about the superstition, and things of that particular extent. And all of a sudden that day, you know, we kind of see how his wife is very materialistic, and she's always saying, you know, why can't we be, you know, richer? And, you know, she's so unhappy with the things that they have, right? And the father's very optimistic. He's a very lighthearted, very nice sort of individual, and he's like, hey, I got you a present. And she's like, oh, really, you did? And she's very sarcastic. And sometimes you think, man, this chick, you know, it's the 1800s, and she was pretty much running the show, and she was really mean. And all of a sudden, like, she's like, oh, you said you had a present, what did you get me? Diamonds? And man, you know, I was just like, whoa, she's super cold, man. She's a viper. And so anyways, the father's like, no, I got you a lottery ticket. And she's just like, man, you're such a loser. And, you know, she demeans, and she's just so sarcastic and, you know, belittling. And you really hate her. You do. And you'll hate her more in just a moment, right? And so the father's like, yeah, I have a lottery ticket. And she's just like, whatever, you probably lost anyways, like, I don't care. And so that night he dies in his sleep, and they bury him and things like that. And, you know, a few days pass, and a friend of the son's comes and visits and says, you know, I'm very sorry, my condolences to you regarding your father and things like that. And he's sitting there at the table with him, and he's like, oh, well, you know, thank you. And he's like, so, you know, have you decided what you're going to do with the money? And he's like, well, what money? He's like, what do you mean, you don't know? He's like, what are you talking about? And so he pulls out a paper, and come to find, his name is in the paper. He's won the lottery, and it's for millions of dollars, possibly billions, I don't know. It was like a European currency, okay? You can't blame me, you know. And so anyways, he wins the lottery, and it's like, you know, it's like a, I don't know, nationwide lottery. And so all of a sudden they go through the entire house. The house is a wreck. They've looked everywhere for that freaking ticket. They cannot find the ticket, guys. Nowhere to be found. And so the wife is thinking in bed, and she's like, you know where we haven't checked, right? Your father. Maybe he's got the ticket. And the guy's like, no way. I'm not going to go dig up my father. I'm not going to be a ghoul, you know? The very thing that we loathe and despise and fear. I'm not going to be that. She's like, you are going to do it, and you're going to do it tonight. And so he goes out there, and it's a very cloudy, dark sky. And so he manages to dig to the casket, and he's kind of hesitating, but then he finally does it. He opens it, and he sees under the moonlit sky, because now the clouds have moved, and perfectly he sees this sardonic smile on his father's face, so grimace and so creepy, that he starts screaming like crazy. And then all of a sudden he starts laughing, like a creepy laugh, and he starts looking through his pockets, and he finds a ticket, but he starts making like weird noises, like he's like laughing, crying. It sounds kind of like Six Shooter from Puppet Master, and when you look at him, he's kind of got the same kind of grin. So I'm like, oh, I guess, you know, they kind of took that. And so he gets home, and so his wife is like, did you find it? And he's like, yeah, I did. He really can't communicate anymore because his face is frozen like a monster. And so she's like, oh my god, what's the matter? Why can't you talk? And so she lights a candle, she sees his face, and then she dies of fright. I mean, you see that in the middle of the night, you're just thinking, you know, she's a greedy, evil slut who's like just totally mean to her husband and her father-in-law, and she asks him to do this like super devious deed, and she like dies of fright because she's created this monster. So Frankenstein is dead, man. She's like totally dead. And so so here we are. That is a story of the Baron. And the Baron's like, yeah, you know, that guy was me. And so the doctor's just like there, and he's like, okay, so that was not your friend, that was you. And he's like, wow. And he goes, guess what? Guess why you're here? You're gonna fix me up. You're gonna make me have a regular face. And the doctor's like, I can't do that. That's like impossible. He's like, you're gonna do it. And he says it in the most eloquent way of being so devious. He's like, you are gonna do it, or I'm gonna kill my wife. I'm gonna torture her. I'm gonna have her match my face. And so the surgeon is just like, okay, I've got to figure this out. And so he winds up, you know, after this, he goes to see his ex-girlfriend, the Baroness, and he's like, I can't do this. This is like impossible. You know, his face is like stuck like that. And she's like, you need to. And so we have this whole, it's like the next day, right, where Mr. Sardonicus and the Baroness are talking, and he's like, you need to persuade him. I don't even care. He's starting to pimp out his wife to the surgeon. He's like, you need to do at any point, you need to take one for the team and do whatever you can to get my face normal. And then she's like, look, you are like sick. You are like sick, evil, devious guy. And so he drags her to this like dungeon, and he's like, look, I mean business. And so he straps her down in this creepy like pin the pendulum sort of looking dungeon. He's like, I promise you, I will make you look worse than me. Like he basically, he's standing his evil ground, if you will. She's like, dang, he means business. And so anyways, Mr. Sardonicus, the Baron, goes up to the doctor, makes him a deal, makes him an offer, says, look, you fix my face, I will let you run off with my wife, the Baroness, and it will be a deal that he will not go back on. And so the Baroness is like, you know what? I'm inspired now. I'm gonna fix this guy's face. And so he's like, this clearly has to be psychological. So he's like, you know what? He figures out that his father, that they've kept him upstairs, and for what reason, I have no idea. Maybe it's a guilt, I have no idea. And so he's like, we're gonna have you face your father, and this should basically resolve what we have going on right now as far as your face with the sardonic smile that is frozen, that looks like a pig man. And so he does. He takes him up to the attic, and they throw him in the room, and he starts screaming and freaking out because he's got to see his dead father, right? And so all of a sudden when he comes out, his face is just like, it looks normal, right? And so he's like, get out of here, you know, you fixed my face. And he's like, you know, and I guess, you know, maybe it's all the emotions or whatever, where he's so distracted. And so the doctor and the Baroness, you know, depart. They take off like really quickly. And at that very end, we see where the Baron is at the dinner table, and I guess he's gonna drink wine or he's gonna eat or something. And that's when he realizes his face is stuck the way it is. Can you believe that? That's crazy, right? And he starts throwing things and freaking out and getting angry. And to me, I think that was a really cool concept, a really cool idea, you know, for the Doctor to outsmart Mr. Sardonicus.
Mr. Sardonicus. His deeds formed a fabric of nightmares. His face, the face of Sardonicus, can be described only in the eyes of its beholders.